Aloha, welcome to our webinar, Tough Conversations, Creating Safe Spaces for Keiki Parents and Caregivers. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Jessica Gleason. I'm a librarian with the Hawaii State Public Library System. And also joining me is Chad Holbrun. Chad can wave and say hello.
Morning.
Hi, Chad. Chad is my co-host, and he is a fellow public librarian with the Hawaii State Public Library System. And before we get started, I wanted to go over a few details to ensure that everyone is able to participate and get the most out of this webinar as possible. This session is hosted on Zoom webinar, and they appear differently than Zoom meetings you have attended before. During the webinar, you cannot be seen or heard. There's no need to turn on or off your mic or camera. Auto-generated closed captions are available for anyone who needs them. You can turn closed captions on by clicking on the CC or live transcript at the bottom of your screen. From here, you can choose to show subtitles, view the full transcript, or adjust the subtitle settings. We also invite you to submit questions throughout the presentation by using the Q&A feature. You can post questions and as time allows, we will answer them. You may also post them anonymously. A recording of this webinar will be available 1 week from today. Everyone who registered for the webinar will be emailed a link to the recording on the HSPLS YouTube page, as well as resources that we talk about throughout the program. So I'd like to begin by sharing a little bit about the inspiration for this webinar. The first inspiration, of course, is our Winter Reading Challenge. The theme is Read for a Better World, which seeks to cultivate empathy and understanding in other people and cultures, and to promote social emotional learning, and anything that books inspire us, how books inspire us to be better people in the world and make change for the better. A link to register for this free program will be available in the chat. You don't need to have a library card to participate, and all types of reading, including reading to your keiki, counts toward our total minutes read as a community. So please check our website for reading recommendations, resources, and recordings of other virtual programs at librarieshawaii.org, and that will be available in the chat as well. In addition, we are promoting, Chad and I, the Conscious Child Family Book Discussion Kits. This is a pilot program based on Maui at the Wailuku and Lahaina Public Libraries. The kits are now available for checkout with a library card. You can find our locations and contact information at our website at the librarieshawaii.org URL. And the goal of the book kits are to celebrate diverse voices, to help facilitate family discussions about racial equity, identity, and justice. Included in each kit are discussion questions for each book and a list of further recommended reading. In addition to the book kits, we also offer recommended reading lists through your public library, including picture books that teach social emotional learning skills, and specially made book lists on joy and self-love, identity and belonging, solidarity and activism, and immigration and refugees, which are the 4 themes of our book discussion kits. You can also check out the Rainbow Book List at ala.org, and that's a resource that Kim, one of our panelists, shared with us. So those links will be available also in our resource list that we send you along with the recording. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our 3 panelists today. Our first panelist is Kim Allen. She is a practice development specialist with the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division, also called CAMD. Kim has worked for CAMD for 13 years, during which time she started a Safe Spaces committee aimed at improving the mental health services of the CAMD, its contracted providers, and the system of care for LGBTQ+ youth and families. Welcome, Kim. You could unmute if you want, Kim, and say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Kim. Our next panelist is Robin Lee. She is the center chief at the Maui Family Guidance Center within the CAMD, the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division of the Department of Health. She has been with CAMD for 9.5 years, with 6 of those years being at the Maui Family Guidance Center. And Robin also volunteers as a co-presenter for Mental Health America for the Youth Suicide and Bullying Prevention, as well as Suicide Prevention 101 trainings. And would you like to say hello, Robin?
Sure. Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, Robin. And last but not least, we have Dr. Kaniala Kekaulike. He is a private practice Native Hawaiian clinical psychologist with more than 20 years of experience working with children, adolescents, and families in the state of Hawaii. His special training and skills in working with individuals, groups, and communities to improve mental health by discussing emotions, experiences, and holistic solutions. Dr. Kekaulike is an adjunct professor at Wayland Baptist University, where he teaches graduate courses in counseling psychology. All right. Good morning, Dr. Kekaulike.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. So we want to transition to our talk story session. So I would like to invite, make sure that you feel safe asking questions in this space. You may use the Q&A again for anonymous questions. You can also use the chat to respond to some of the questions that we'll be asking the panelists and asking you. The first question we want to ask of everyone is, what is social emotional learning? And how can it be applied in a family environment? So are there ways that you practice social emotional learning at home? Do you need help defining it? You can put some input in the chat if you would like. So we'll start with that, and I will ask the panelists as well, maybe perhaps Dr. Kekaulike, to begin talking about what is social emotional learning.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. When we talk about social emotional learning, it really can take place in any kind of environment with our children. And from what I believe that social emotional learning happens, I think, throughout your whole lifetime, but it's especially important as you're a young child growing up into your teens and in young adulthood. So these situations in which children are placed can be of course, in schools, church, out in public, also in, different situations in parties. So this is where our children learn how to navigate emotionally with other children and other adults as well, right? So in this comes the ability to be confident and learning different skills on how to be confident, either talking to other people, talking to other children, talking to adults, and then developing those relationships with people, right? And, it can be in any kind of situation. Also when they're working on collaborating with other people, like in sports kind of situations, with teamwork. How do you play with other kids? How do you play nicely with other children who may or may not be well-behaved in some ways, right? So that's what they're learning. They're learning how to navigate, how to kind of discern what is good behavior versus bad behavior. And then also developing empathy, how they care for one another, how they care for other children, how they care for adults, and then how do they navigate these feelings either in a negative way or in a positive way, and how to kind of discern what is a negative behavior, what is a positive behavior. So with children, it's really important that they have these social, gatherings and opportunities. But a lot has changed within the past 3 years now, where a lot of our children have been at home. And so how are we to create those experiences within the home and with just our families? I mean, we have families who are single parents with one child, and that's very difficult. And depending on what kind of situation you're in, as far as if you're a single parent with one child, how do you create that learning environment as far as navigating how to build their, their self-esteem, their self-confidence. How do you get that interaction with people? Is it going to be online? Do you take them out to meet friends that you know that you're safe with, as far as not, being exposed to getting sick? Because they don't have that school opportunity. Now moving back into the schools, now they're having a little bit more stress, having to deal with that stress of now being with people if they've been separated for a long time. So being able to provide those types of experiences with people that you see every single day, rather than, as far as a family, rather than being a very social situation when you're in a school system or a school environment where you're one of 20, 30 kids in a classroom. So, and I think that is, part of the discussion we want to have today is how do you kind of communicate that, and how do you, provide those experiences in the home as a parent, which is difficult in itself, but then you add the situations of a pandemic. Being in a pandemic situation, how do you now deal with all the stress that comes with that? And then teaching our children, how to be good kids, how to be good socially, and how to keep them emotionally together, right? When a lot of us as parents, and I speak for myself as well, trying to keep ourselves emotionally together at the same time, right? Because it's back and forth. They're in school, they're out of school, and you have your own stressors, you have your own health that you got to worry about, your own mental health, your own kind of self-care that you need for personally, that you need for yourself, but then also taking care of the people who are around us, right? And so how do you kind of balance all those things? So I know that we wanted to kind of speak onto like safe spaces and how that's created within our own home and system. So, and I think either Robin or Kimberly wanted to go into that. I don't know if that's a good segue into.
Sure. I just wanted to also add on that, one thing that I think is important for parents to do is to, have a diverse group of friends and, expose their kids to learning empathy for a lot of different people from different backgrounds. And that really can help with the social emotional learning as well, I think.
And speaking to the creating safe spaces, Robin and Kim have some slides that I can share that give us a definition of what a safe space looks like, or what it takes to create a safe space. So I'll share the slides, and Robin and Kim could speak to what those slides tell us about creating safe spaces.
Great. So just wanted to identify for folks what a safe space might look like or might be like. And we've done several trainings for folks over the past year. And sometimes when we do these trainings, we ask people for their input about what makes a space safe for them. And here are some of the answers that we've gotten along the way. Basically, when you want to create a safe space, you want to be able to have a space where you or the child can express their true selves. And there is no judgment about who they are or how they express themselves. We want to make sure that kids feel like they're all parts of themselves. Oh, sorry. All parts of them are feeling accepted. I'm just gonna close my door, hold on. Sorry about that. And someplace where they can be creative, where they feel unconditionally loved. Safe spaces are affirming environments. There are spaces where they can have friends, they feel supported, and that the children feel like they are becoming the experts on themselves. I'll turn it over to Robin and she'll go through the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Kim. So as Kim was saying, we've done numerous trainings over the past 1 to 2 years about creating safe spaces through our Safe Spaces Committee at CAMD. And although our trainings are focusing on creating safe spaces for LGBTQ identified youth, these ideas and this information can be utilized for any minority or marginalized group. So please keep that in mind. But for the purposes of some of this, will be specifically identifying LGBTQ identified youth. Well, first and foremost, and this kind of goes back to what was being discussed earlier, is folks need to identify and examine their own beliefs, right? Where did your beliefs come from? You know, how you believe or think about a certain marginalized group. Did those beliefs come from fact? Did they come from myths? Did they come from a place of fear or a place of knowledge? You know, who did those messages come from? And then also, more importantly, how have your beliefs evolved since the first messages you received about a particular marginalized group? Have they changed? Hopefully they have as you've gotten older, as you've learned more information about particular people. And Kim's saying, you know, as parents, you know, having different friends from different backgrounds, different ethnicities, different minority statuses is very important to expose kids to different differences early on. It's important to learn and practice using terms. And we have terms and pronouns here. Terminology and pronouns, that information is constantly changing and evolving. And even for Kim and I who do these trainings all the time, we have to keep up because it changes. And I'm no expert on pronouns, but I do try to keep up with, you know, new information as it comes about. So it's important to practice that. And Kim will offer some references after this slide where you can learn about terminology and pronouns, particularly as it relates to LGBTQ identified people. So it's also really important as a parent or as a teacher or as an adult in a young person's life who is LGBTQ to let that person come out when they are ready, all right? Don't what we call out them, right? They will come out when they're ready because they'll come out when they feel safe to come out. They'll come out when they're ready for people to know who they are and know their identity. They may not themselves be ready to admit who they feel like on the inside. So just trust that they will let you know when they are ready to come out. And then it's really important to understand coming out is not a one-time thing. Coming out is a lifetime process. A young person coming out possibly for the first time, maybe coming out to the person closest to them who they trust the most. Well, then from there, you have to take it to, oh, now do I trust this other group of people? Every time they go to a new school or go to a new classroom, have a new teacher, a new coach, you know, a new adult in their life or a new friend in their life, they have to make that decision whether they can come out to them or not. And if they don't feel safe, they will not. So it's important for us to create safe spaces, especially for kids, so that they know they can come out. So one of the ways I work in the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Division, and in our office, we all have rainbow flags on our desks, just small ones. We also have posters on our walls that say this is a safe space in different rainbow colors, so that kids who do come in for our services, whether they've come out or not, they understand, hey, this is a safe space for me. Just having that on the walls or on a desk, a small flag, a small token, something like that, shows them that they are safe and they can be themselves in that environment. So it's really important if you're in a position where you work with kids in any way to have something that can, where you can display that you are a safe space. So in addition to displaying some type of flags, posters, whatever it might be, it's really important to be an ally. And what does that mean? If you're not LGBTQ yourself, it's really important to be an ally for LGBTQ people, particularly children. It means being, accepting and supportive of that child. Let them come out to you. Let them talk to you. It's important to listen to them and what their needs are. Don't make assumptions of what they need. Okay, let them tell you, let them guide you as far as what their needs are. Being an ally is a two-way street. It's not you telling them what they need. It's allowing, listening and being open, even though they're kids. Being open, listen to what they have to tell you, and then help them as you can, as you would with any child. LGBTQ youth, or any youth really, who has at least one adult figure in their life will be so much more successful than a child who does not have a positive adult role model in their life. So also, in addition to that, we, always look for more information, and there's plenty of resources out there. We're going to share some resources that are both local and national. So I'm going to hand it over to Kim now.
Actually, before we move on, there was a question that came in. You kind of touched on this already, Robin, but the question is, do you have any suggestions for how aunties and uncles can be supportive of young adults in their family who have come out as gay, even when schools and libraries are facing challenges over books in the collection that feature themes and experiences from LGBTQ communities? So I can kind of answer to the effects for the library side. So as librarians, we are professionals. We do follow a Bill of Rights within our profession. And one of those Bill of Rights is that we cannot censor and we do not ban. We don't choose sides, basically. And then as far as the schools, so schools and the libraries fall under Department of Education. And if I'm not mistaken, in Hawaii's constitution, there's a clause of some sort that says, it's not word for word, so don't quote me on this, but it's basically leading to the effect that we don't ban our books either. So just to answer from the school DOE library point of view. But Robin, if you could answer the other side to the question.
Sure, I'll start it, and I'm sure if Kim has anything to add. But we work under the Department of Health, so we're a government agency. And when we started the Safe Spaces Committee several years ago, our goal was to have our services be safe and opening and affirming to all of our youth and their families, because we're very family-centered. So we include the whole family in our services, and also to educate all of our staff who work at CAMD, all of our provider agencies. We work with a number of nonprofit provider agencies. And then Kim and I have done, like I said, several trainings for both provider agencies, CAMD staff, other government agencies such as Department of Education. And our number one thing we did was make all of our forms inclusive, very inclusive type of language. So not, the majority of our families do not have mother, father, right? We have a variety of different families. They look very different. Aunties and uncles often are the guardians for children, but even if they're not, you can be very supportive of the child. Like I was saying, listen to them, listen to the child, let them let you know, how they're feeling, what they're thinking. Children can understand their gender identity at a very young age. Some don't identify until later. As far as sexual orientation, I think the average age, Kim, you can correct me, that they understand this is around 10 or 11. I'm trying to remember Dr. Anderson's trainings, but so they do have an idea of being different. They may not quite understand what it is, but it's just important to be an advocate, listen to them, and do the research. It's out there, material information, educational information is out there. So please, do what you can to look at that information. On our website at CAMD, we have a ton of information. We have recorded trainings, videos from the very early, ABCs, which we call the ABCs of LGBT, and then growing from there to help adults understand, what it means to be LGBTQ and how they can be an ally. But most of us are mental health professionals who work at CAMD, and we all have a duty to do no harm. So we would, that's first and foremost, no matter how a youth identifies, it's our duty to do no harm to that youth.
Thank you so much, Robin and Kim. All the resources that were on the slides that are in this slideshow will be shared. So all the links and resources will be available to all of the attendees. And I think, we can segue into, we talked about safe spaces, what is social emotional learning. But as a parent myself, I realize that if I'm not able to regulate my emotions, if I'm under extra stress, it's very difficult. It's challenging to deal with an unregulated child. And I've learned through, personal growth and what self-care looks like for me, that the more I take care of myself, the better I can provide, the safe space that my children need me to provide for them. So the next question really is, what are the challenges? And this is for people that are listening in, for parents and caregivers. What are your challenges? You can post them in the chat. It can be, difficulty taking care of yourself, finding the time, identifying what that looks like for you. It could be, there's stigmas still around mental health, and that it is critical to our health. It is a health issue. So to our panelists, anyone who would like to chime in about, how you've perhaps helped parents, or if you're a parent yourself, sharing your experience of how do you overcome these challenges?
Right, I guess I'll just kind of chime in right there. But I think it's really important that parents, and I'm a parent of two, a newly 18-year-old and a 15-year-old. And so it's really important that parents and caregivers can be really anyone who's with the child, spends time with them, that they really take time for themselves. It has nothing to do with being selfish, because a lot of parents and caregivers will say, that's just selfish. I need to pay attention to them. Really, what you want to do is to be able to take care of yourself first, so you can take care of others, so you can take care of them. So it's kind of like the whole, when you're on the airplane and you have the mask drop, you have to help yourself, and then you can help whoever's next to you, right? So it's kind of that thought process. And then just being able to have an open communication about anything, especially if it's with, sexual orientation or any kind of difficult topic that you're having, right? And so taking care of yourself, exercising, and then even include the kids on those kind of journeys that you take. But then you also need your own self-care, whether it's spending time with your friends, going to a movie, going to the beach, and just relaxing. And of course, it really depends on how old the child is, of course, right? So just as long as you have some quiet time to yourself, that you're able to kind of focus on, give more back to the kids when the time comes. So I think that's a good self-care type stuff. Yeah. And I'm sure Kimberly and Robin have a lot to add to that as well.
I guess I would just recommend practicing mindfulness, even if only for a few minutes a day. If you can just have a quiet space and sort of recognize whatever it is that you might be thinking or feeling, and then sort of redirect your energy to just sort of trying to empty all the thoughts from your head, and being very gentle with yourself, and allowing yourself to just breathe. I think that's sometimes helpful.
Yeah, and I can only echo what they just said. Self-care is number one, and that looks different for everybody. For me, it's, physical exercise is very important to me. It's always been part of my life for a long time. So, that for some people, meditation, things like yoga, going for a walk, reading, whatever it is that makes you calm. And I just think, self-care is number one important. If you're not healthy, you can't be any good for anybody else. Is always what I've understood.
Thank you so much. So we did have a question. Do you think displaying rainbow flags in a home environment makes sense to create a friendly LGBTQ environment? I think you kind of answered that, but.
Yeah, I think inside the home or outside the home, wherever you can do it, I think it's helpful for people to recognize, be able to recognize that you're an ally or you're a member of the community.
Awesome.
I like too that having one outside the home, if that's something that you're able to do, it's important because it gets the conversation started. Someone might be like, "Oh, what does that mean? I don't know." And, especially a child. And so help them to understand. Again, this is exposing kids and people to people who are maybe different than they are and in some way. So just like they would if someone were to put out a flag that is of their favorite football team. Oh, what is that? Teach them, oh, this is what that is. Same idea, just teaching them that this is what this means so that they're at least exposed to the idea and it's not, just so that they're educated as they grow up and get hopefully healthy, good first messages.
And the library is there for you as well. These Conscious Child book kits feature transgender children. They're just amazing stories out there that you can read together and talk about. And of course, as you say, making sure that you're inclusive in exposing, your family of learning about other people. And really, books are one way to do that, but also the best way is to actually meet people and talk to them and start conversations. So we have a question about how can families create a resource center for ourselves and others? Anyone wants to take that one?
Well, I guess keeping just sort of a log of different websites that are helpful and representative of a variety of different topics. I think that can be one way, or making sure that you know where to go for different types of information that you're looking for. And the library is such an excellent resource. So yeah, thank you to the library for that.
Yeah, I would say go to our website, talk to a librarian. I'm still learning about resources in our community like CAMD and places that we can refer you to that will perhaps help you address a problem or a concern. Another question is, any tips on how to talk with kids experiencing bullying or the possibility of being bullied because you are identify as LGBTQ?
Robin, you do a lot of the anti-bullying, right? You want to answer that?
Yeah. So when we do the anti-bullying, youth suicide prevention and bullying prevention discussions, we actually do them in the classroom with the kids, with middle school and high school students. And basically, what we're trying to teach is empathy skills and also educate kids on how particular groups tend to be targeted for various reasons due to social stigmas, and and what effect this has not just on the victim of the bullying, but the bullier and the bystanders, and how other kids, what we try to do is work with other kids and how you can be a defender, how you can help the situation. So the bullying, can either be stopped or at least minimized, and the adults can step in and, do what they need to do. So I think it's so important I think the question came from how can you talk to kids who are being bullied? Is that what it was? Okay. Yeah. So, just first of all, being assertive, being proud of who you are, not being afraid to tell an adult if it's happening. That's number one. Let someone know who can do something about it, because no one deserves to be bullied, no matter who they are or where they are. And if that's not helping you, take it to the next step. But also advocate for change, advocate for education. That's part of the reason Mental Health America is doing these trainings in the classrooms. It's not just for the students, it's for the teachers too. And I've gone into classrooms and done trainings for teachers on creating safe spaces, particularly as it relates to bullying and bullying prevention for LGBTQ youth. Treat it like you would any other bullying situation of any marginalized group. Don't ignore it, don't avoid it. But teach your child, yes, stand up for yourself, let an adult know. If the bullying continues, then obviously just keep it, taking it to the next level. Don't avoid it. Don't run away from it. Don't be afraid of it. Get allies, have them help you with the situation. It's much easier if you're a victim of bullying, if you have other friends who can step in and help defend you. That's why being an ally is so important. I think LGBTQ people cannot do it themselves. They do need allies to help them because they are a minority group. So like I said, just, it is something that's unfortunate at any more marginalized group that people, will use this tactic sometimes because of how they've been taught, lack of education about the topic, myths that they believe. So, just being there for your child. And also there are support groups out there too, support groups for parents and for kids. And that's listed in our resources as well. There's some local ones, and there's also some national ones that they can join online, such as the Trevor Project is a huge one for LGBTQ identified youth.
I also wanted to just pop in and talk about Gender and Sexuality Alliances really briefly, that if your child's school has one of those clubs, it's shown to really significantly decrease bullying. So if they're not always called GSA, they might be called Diversity Club or something like that. But if your child's school does not have one, maybe trying to advocate for them to start one. That's a really good tool for kids to sort of build allies too.
I think one thing also, sorry, I wanted to just kind of add in there that being able to teach our kids how to recognize if they are being bullied. Because I think a lot of children, what I do see a lot of is, kids, they're being bullied about their sexual orientation or really kind of anything that they're being bullied about that they don't really understand, or that they're being bullied. Oh, well, that's my friend and they're just teasing me, and it really comes down to really find out what the root cause of, what the target is and what the target behavior is. And so it might kind of go over the head. It depends how young they are, right? So being able to recognize when it's bullying or when it's just, some kind of playing around kind of situation. So, but those are great discussions, right?
Thank you. Yeah, and I think it speaks to the way that we need to affirm children's feelings and allow them to have their feelings, because from personal experience, there might be various factors where you hide certain feelings aren't safe to express, in your home or at school. And there's different protections that we create at a very young age that later on don't really serve us. And so I think, what the efforts that, mental health professionals do to support parents and children in in accepting themselves and in being open and transparent and knowing how to identify a feeling, to know that it will pass and to express it safely. So that I'm interested as a parent, you know, if there's basics of that, how to regulate, you know, how to identify a feeling and what the steps, basic steps are to foster a healthy social, a healthy emotional learning environment. If anyone would like to speak to that.
You know, just being able to create that safe space like we were talking about. So that can kind of be for anything. But then, you know, making sure that it's an appropriate time. You know, you don't want to be doing it while you're cooking dinner or you have something else going on and it being a side conversation. Maybe it's a time, you know, where they're about to go to bed and you're going to check in with them. And, you know, just it's more like a safe space, safe time, right? There's a time and a place for talking to kids. You have to kind of decide, you know, is this a good time? It's a good time for me to talk as a parent or an uncle or a grandparent, but is it a good time for the child, right? That's the, are they going to want to listen? You know, there's a difference between talking to a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old. 15-year-olds really don't like to listen a lot of the time, so you got to kind of figure that out as well, right? And it's a difficult time because you're going through a lot of changes, you're going through a lot of behaviors, a lot of feelings. So it's hard as a parent to just say, you know, it's easier for a parent just to, and I'm guilty of this myself by just saying, you know, okay, so let's just talk and figure it out, right? But you have to really kind of just listen and be present, and which is a hard skill to do as a parent when you have a million things going on, right? It's kind of on your time, your kind of situation. So just kind of creating that safe time and space, I think is good.
Thank you. We have a couple other questions. One is culture is viewed as a resource for learning, not a barrier. How do you define culture and how does the culture support social emotional learning? So maybe Dr. Kikaliki, like the Native Hawaiian culture, what are aspects of it that support social emotional learning?
Right. So, you know, when it comes to Native Hawaiians, I mean, it's a very child-focused, you know, very close, nurturing community as a family. It's a family unit, it's very important. So communication, of course, is very important. Being able to navigate personal responsibility and being able to take care of others is kind of what is promoted culturally through Native Hawaiians, right? So making sure that everyone is kind of heard and it's not just focused on one person, right? And we tend to value our elders more than the younger ones, which is good, which is great. But then to be able to balance that out within a family system, because a lot of our families are multi-generational, right? In one home. So you have, you know, very young children, grandchildren, and then teenagers, and then adults, and then grandparents, parents, and then grandparents. So kind of how to balance all that out in one and being able to communicate in a good way. And so kind of using those cultural practices like, you know, Ho'oponopono to kind of work things out in a good facilitation type environment, right? Being able to do that in a correct way. And then just really just kind of listening. I think what it does come down to is listening and follow what, you know, our elders have to say. And I know in these times it's hard because Westernization kind of takes over and there's different formats of family communication, right? So, but being able just to focus on everybody's needs and making sure that everybody's kind of listened to is good. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Yes. We did have another question. Do you have any information regarding different stages boys go through? I can see many emotional changes starting to happen with my 9-year-old. It's been a little challenging to communicate simple needs and asking him for support around the house, for example. How to be supportive and make a safe space when little things create so much friction.
Right. So I think I know Kimberly and Robin can add to this as well, but I think when it comes down to working with 9-year-olds, that's a 9-year-old boys in itself can be very difficult, right? Because they're kind of all over the place, don't really want to listen. So that's just kind of developmentally what happens. So usually when it comes like to chores, you would really want to sit down with them and make a chores list, but it works better when you work with the child to come up with the type of chores that they want to do, right? And so if they have buy-in into what they're going to do, whether it's wash dishes, take out the trash, clean up their room, if they come up with their own way of doing chores or kind of different chores to do, as long as something gets done, it's a way of a parent getting what they want, but it's coming from the child, so they think they're kind of in control, right? So we're kind of tricking them in a way to do what we want them to do. So it's kind of just the kind of thinking smarter on how we get them to do things. So, but yeah, 9-year-old boys can be tough and interesting. Yeah. I don't know if Robin and Kimberly want to add to that.
Well, it's been a while since I've done any direct care, but my biggest thing is, giving them responsibility, letting them feel like, they are contributing to the family unit. So having some responsibilities and buy-in for those responsibilities, maybe some type of reward system that's appropriate. Now, I'm not talking about bribes, but, reward system for contributing and being part of the family unit. And, that would help them maybe feel a little bit more responsible and more likely to want to contribute.
Thanks, Robin. Well, I want to get to these couple next questions. We have about almost 10 minutes remaining. The next question is, in a household with alcoholics, other addictions, or other significant dysfunction, there may be no safe space, and the worst bullying may be at home. Would the panel care to comment?
My dog is barking, so I'm going to let somebody else answer.
Well, I mean, that's a tough situation. And so it really depends on what other support systems they might have within the family or resources that they have out in the community as well. I think in those types of situations, it's really up to a family member in some case. I mean, it can be addressed in many different ways. So it's a very difficult question to ask. But if there is someone within the family unit that can, seek that help, that's difficult. And because of the stigma with mental health and, and really the kind of consequences that could happen as a result, which is why a lot of people don't turn in family members or ask for help, really. That's probably the hardest thing to kind of deal with. Always, finding someone that you trust outside that family unit, whether it's a therapist, whether it's somebody at a school, just the best friends you can talk to if they're kind of outside that realm. There's also resources you can call, like CARES Hawaii which used to be the Access Line, is a great resource as well that people can call. Also 211 is a great resource to call as well. Talk to someone at church if you're active in a church somewhere, or some kind of group that you're in that you kind of talk to and bounce ideas off of, or it just really depends on the situation. So
yeah, and I just go back to a child having at least one supportive adult. It doesn't have to be a parent. It doesn't have to be someone within the home. It could be a teacher or a coach or after school program facilitator, something like that. Just one person. Like you said, it's a very unfortunate situation if you don't have the support at home. But if you can get support outside of the home, that can be a tremendous help. And maybe at some point that can help the home situation. But it's very tough.
Thanks. All right, we have a couple other questions. How do we encourage fathers to be more involved in the creation of safe spaces? Something as simple as being a part of the daily reading routine with Keiki, like reading at bedtime or getting more involved.
Well, I'll try to take a stab at this. So, so I am a father, and the way that I actually became more engaging with my kids was it was them asking me to do the little stuff with them. It was just going outside for walks, just talking to them, talking about how their day was, doing the bedtime stories. And I know the bedtime stories, that can get them a little wound up depending how animated you get with the books, but it's creating that experience, which in itself is creating that safe space for everybody. So when I read to my kids, and I'm referring to the kits that Jessica and I were doing, I took this home with my kids, and just seeing the characters in the books and then seeing my kids' reactions to them, they could actually identify themselves with the characters. So they could see themselves in the books. And for me, as a kid, I didn't see that. But as a father, I want my kids to see that, because I want them to have these new experiences and to have these new understandings of, wow, I can actually go out and do this, or wow, that's me. It's just making the connection. So whatever connection you have with your kids, whether it's like I mentioned, doing the bedtime story, even if you're doing like little video games, it's just whatever you can do to create that safe space, just do it on their terms, basically. That's what I found works best for me.
Thanks, Chad. All right, we have one more question and 7 minutes remaining. Let's see. Kids are interacting online more and more. Do you have recommendations for watching for online bullying? And do you think there is socialization benefits to doing things like playing games online with peers?
I guess I can sort of address this both as a parent and as a therapist. I think there's some benefits, of course, because they still have that interaction when they're at home, depending on what the environment is that they're socializing. So I know you have to keep very close tabs on what's being said, what's being done, because you can't hear in the conversation if they have headphones on, right? That's all internal. Really, what all you hear is their response to people. So like with my son, he's online, his friends are these online people that are classmates, but then there's people that can come in from all over and you really don't know. So you got to teach kids, what's happening. Also, if you hear conversations, so if you make them have the earphones off and you can hear conversations every once in a while, you can pick up on a lot of bullying that is just interactive banter between the kids. So you really have to have discussions with your kids. So I've had to have discussions with my son about, why is this person calling you a name? And then there's swearing going on. There's a whole bunch of inappropriate language. And really trying to navigate how to communicate, what you believe is bullying. And remember, we're only hearing one side usually, right? And so as a parent, we got to kind of step back instead of just kind of jumping on somebody and say, well, turn it off. And, you really have to kind of structure that time that they're on computers and playing games or interacting socially. But for good, it can also be if they're stuck at home. So I have kids that are stuck at home right now on distance learning. And so their interaction is all on the phone, or if it's on FaceTime or it's on computer, right? In class. So, but just kind of keeping an ear open is what you need to do, I think. And kind of watch out for those trigger words and the way, and explain to them that certain ways of communicating is not appropriate, even though if it's joking. We talked about that earlier, right? Like appropriate language and stuff. So yeah.
All right. Any other insights on cyberbullying? That seems like a real difficult problem, and big social media companies are trying to be held account. They're trying to make them accountable, Instagram particularly, for the way that young children's body images are affected by social media. So I guess that speaks to the importance of clarifying, what your values are as a family, to create these safe spaces in which to talk about things and be able to actively listen. And because it seems really daunting as a parent to have to, all of that is out of your control, right? So what is in our control? And that would be perhaps to really focus in on creating safe spaces in our households. All right, well, we have just 4 more minutes. Any last thoughts from our panelists? There was interesting comment in chat about the culture question. And someone mentioned that it would be interesting because traditional Asian culture is stereotypically not showing emotions and avoiding being a burden to others, which I see that in my own family. But, there are cultural components to the way that we behave as well. For our plus and for the resources that we'll be sharing, the library is your ultimate one-stop place for connection to these resources. And Chad and I are educating ourselves on how to help you connect with people that can help, perhaps. And any last thoughts, last comments from the panelists?
Just wanted to express my appreciation for everyone who showed up today. And, it's wonderful that you're interested in learning more, and so glad that you invite us, Jessica and Chad. Thank you so much for hosting this.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
I hope we can partner again and continue this conversation.
Definitely.
Oh, we're getting lots of thank yous. Thank you for this. All right. I hope everyone has a great day, and aloha. Ahui ho.